I see this all over the place, just like in my email inbox and kind of scrolling around social media, broken links on social media, broken links in ads, incorrect ad copy or typos, all of this sort of stuff that makes you look amateur at its best. It just kind of makes it look like you made a mistake. At its worst, like it could derail a lot of really great progress in terms of sales or fans coming into your world.
You are now listening to the Creative Juice podcast brought to you by Entrepreneur.io.
What's up, indies? Welcome back to Creative Juice. This is the podcast where we cover building and monetizing your fan base and building a music career with marketing strategies that we see working right now across our music marketing agency and our community of thousands of artists and bands. I hope you enjoy and subscribe. I'm your host, Jack McCarthy, and with me as always is Circa. Cirque, what's up, dude?
Not a whole lot, friend. Just freaking some CSS.
Man, I'm excited for all things 2025, and I think we've got a cool episode today to talk about two things that you can put into place in your music career as it pertains to your music marketing right now as we're kicking off the new year to make your marketing more productive. And I want to even say that these are like two insider secrets or steps, strategies, whatever you want to call them, processes that we see day in, day out, both at our agency, IndieX, and also in our coaching program, Indie Founder, that really help artists and bands get their stuff on track, feel better about their marketing, and get more stuff done.
Yeah. This is what the secret cabal of music marketers that won't tell you the secrets. This is what they talk about when they meet up.
Yeah, well, it's actually funny that you talk about meeting up because that's going to be one of the processes or steps that we're going to dive into here today.
I just lob it up in the air. Nice old fat pitch. You knock it out of the park, buddy.
Dude, I love it. Feels like baseball. It's January. We're not playing baseball. But yeah, I'm really excited about this episode. I'm excited to talk about this because these were processes that you and I put into place early on at the agency, IndieX. And really, I think we've seen them evolve, and we've also seen what happens to artists and their marketing projects and initiatives if they don't have these things in place. In particular, I'll share some stories about, what we kind of see in the wild with artist teams and some areas where I think you can really close the gaps and make marketing a bit more fun, less stressful, especially around like those launches that feel really daunting. And, you're pushing the envelope to the very last minute to really get it done and make it great. These two processes that we're going to talk about today, I think will make everything a lot more enjoyable, productive, fun, and successful.
Hell yeah.
Where do we want to start? Grill me.
Well, can you just give us an overview of sort of the color of your, like the shape of what you're recommending here, or what you think is most effective?
Yeah, for sure. So let's just give the overall 30,000 foot view of these two processes. And you might hear these and think, well, yeah, that totally makes sense. But you wouldn't believe how often I have seen when I audit artists' music businesses and what's going on in their marketing, how inefficient these two areas are. And this has to do with, one, the communication cadence by which we talk about our marketing efforts, and two is a quality assurance process. Now that sounds crazy. It's like, Jack, are you looking at marketing like it's an assembly line? Kinda, yes, I am, because it really helps you to be more effective. And like I said, this is something that we employ at our agency, and I'm hoping that we can kind of just download these processes to you guys today in this episode and give you something that you can think about. So whether you've got a band that's kind of sharing some tasks together when it comes to building out marketing campaigns, working on your audience growth strategy, working on a launch, whatever it might be, marketing your tour, whether you've got a band that you're working with and you're kind of doing things together, or you've got a team and you're delegating tasks, these two processes are really, really crucial, especially as you're working with more and more people. So when I talk about a communication cadence, what I'm specifically referring to is, do you have time set aside in your week that you're actually planning ahead and reviewing what's been done in your marketing related work as it pertains to your music. So what are you looking back at what's been done this last week, these last 2 weeks, and what are you working on in the upcoming week? And this helps to, I would say, one, get people caught up on what was missed, what might have fallen through the cracks, deadlines, things that need to be delivered before work can continue. And man, I can't stress enough how often when we start working with artists, especially at like artists who are more established, communication, I think early on about marketing, it comes a little bit easier, I think. And so if you're starting out or you're just starting to grow and you don't have this habit in place, get it in place now, because I think it will become harder as more and more cooks get in the kitchen. But if you don't have it in place and you're, an already established artist, this will really help you rein in your team and make sure that you're not, pushing things up to the last possible second. And that's really where like critical errors happen. So zooming out 30,000 foot view, that's communication cadence. We call these demos at the agency, and we usually do these on a weekly cadence in some way, shape, or form, whether it's a phone call, whether it's something that's happening asynchronously in a chat like Slack. We use Slack at our agency. You could use any chat that you really want to. You could use email. I don't recommend it, but there's a lot of ways to keep your team in sync with each other, but you have to have a dedicated time and place that you're doing it where you're specifically talking about marketing your music.
Yeah, it's one of those things that like, it's like you hear it, like someone's like, oh, you should have a weekly like meeting. You should look at what you did the last week and you should plan what you're doing this week on a weekly basis. And it's one of those things where you hear it and you're like, yeah, obviously, right? Like everyone kind of knows this. It's intuitive. It makes sense. It's probably something you encounter by the time you get to adulthood, but you don't do it. Like,
Right,
it's like,
right.
yeah, it's like, it can be easy to ignore because it's so obvious. Even if you're not doing it, you can ignore it. And so that's why we end up in these patterns where it's like, yeah, this glaringly obvious thing, I'm actually not getting the benefit of it. And even like, definitely I need to be reminded often that like, hey, probably the thing that's like causing so much drag on your productivity is that you aren't measuring and tracking over time what you're doing. Right. I think the old adage that always feels less obvious to me. So it's like, it's the same thing, just said a little bit differently. And it's more palatable to hear is that which is measured improves. That which is measured and tracked improves exponentially. So meaning if you just take measurements of it, it will just get better on the virtue of the fact that you measured it, because it creates this pressure on you. Now you know what the measurement is, and no matter what the measurement is, it's not enough. Right. And so measuring improves. But then if you measure and you track over time so you can compare measurements in different time frames, then it improves exponentially. So that's always easier for me to it wakes me up more than just saying, well, like you should have like an analysis, like a weekly analysis of like what you're doing, what you're getting done.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And when I kicked off, like I was saying, like some of this might be like, well, duh.
Yeah, well, I mean, kind of all the best stuff is the thing.
Yeah.
It's like all the best stuff. It's like so few get the benefit of it because it's like, well, duh. Doesn't Hormozy say we don't need to be taught, we need to be reminded?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, that's so true here.
Yeah, 100%. And, there's a bit of an insidious pattern that I sometimes see is like, in particular, when working with new artists at the agency or consulting with artists, when you start doing something new, let's say you're getting into marketing your music and you've got some new strategies that you want to try this year. You're probably excited about them, right? The novelty of it makes you want to meet and talk about them. Maybe you're meeting with your bandmates or you're meeting with your manager or you're meeting with me or whatever. The novelty of it excites you. But without the habit that keeps you excited, the insidious thing that I see happen is like the cadence starts to slip, and maybe in 6 months' time, you're not meeting as much. What will start to happen is then your measurements and your results will degrade. So maybe you'll stop working on new ads for your music. Maybe you won't be ahead of the game when it comes to your next single release. And all of a sudden you'll be like, oh shit, like tomorrow's the day and I've got nothing ready. This insidious sort of pattern happens where we get excited about something, we talk about it, we then lose excitement a little bit as it becomes normal, and then the habit of meeting starts to slip, and then progress starts to slip, and this happens over time, and so it just kind of slowly gets stolen away from you. And I think that's something that why I wanted to bring this to the show today, especially as we're moving into January here into 2025. A lot of people are setting goals right now. If you haven't already set some goals, you're setting them right now. I think now is a really good time to say, I'm going to dedicate a certain amount of time each week to specifically pay attention to and plan for and review what's been going on in my marketing for my music so that I can track the results, so that I can measure what I'm doing and I can see progress.
Yeah, literally, like you could just stop yourself right now listening to this and say like, I'm going to do this, and even pull up your calendar app and like schedule it. And then more importantly, tell someone you're going to do it, invite someone to it. That way you have like a point of accountability. Like you're not going to not do it because it's embarrassing.
For sure. Yeah. Back in December, I read the book Atomic Habits by James Clear. It was my first time reading it. I wasn't sure I was going to like it, but I actually did like it a lot. And one of the things that he talks about when it comes to making a habit in the book is to make it rewarding. And so if this idea of meeting and talking about your marketing and planning sounds boring to you, if you're not somebody that likes having meetings, if you think that that sounds rote and routine and you like to be spontaneous and stuff like that, find a way to reward yourself for doing this. And that might just be like, I look at the results and I look at my wins that I've had, and that gives you the dopamine hit of like, oh shit, I'm growing. Like, this is cool. Like, make that the time that you look at your growth. Maybe you withhold looking at the views on your most recent video ad or something like that. I don't know. I'm picking something out of thin air. Maybe you wait until you're meeting Cadence to do that. So when you do, you get that hit of like, oh, okay, cool. Like, I'm being rewarded not only by what's going on in the marketing and how I'm feeling about it, the fans that I'm seeing, but also I'm being rewarded because I'm having this meeting.
Yeah, 100%.
So to tie on to that, I wanted to talk about quality assurance, QA. We call it quality assurance. You might just call it checking your work. It might be just making sure that shit's not broken. This is a criminally underutilized process that I see amongst artists. And how do I know? Broken links, wrong ad creatives, videos used without any audio. I see this all over the place, just like in my email inbox and kind of scrolling around social media, broken links on social media, broken links in ads, incorrect ad copy or typos, all of this sort of stuff that makes you look amateur at its best. It just kind of makes it look like you made a mistake. At its worst, like it could derail a lot of really great progress in terms of sales or fans coming into your world. And where I see this kind of manifest the most, honestly, these two things are so intrinsically tied to each other. Is like, I don't have a process for meeting with my team about what I'm doing, so work gets delayed, so I end up doing things at the last minute, and then the wrong email goes out, or it goes out at the wrong time. And so at IndieX, our agency, we have a quality assurance process that we do with our whole team of marketers where whenever work is done for one of our artist clients, we're reviewing the copy, we're checking links, we're reviewing the ad campaigns, we're looking at the targeting, whatever it is that we're working on, we're bringing on a second set of eyes to make sure that, everything is the way that it should be. And also we're reviewing it with our clients, making sure that they like the way that it sounds or looks and represents them. Now, you as an artist, or you as an artist manager, or, however, whatever capacity you're working in, that might be you doing a lot of that stuff. But just like it's important to put into place a communication process, I think it's also really important to put in a quality assurance process, and it will make your work so much less stressful because you won't, hit the red button and then be wondering like, did I fuck it up?
Yeah. So This is another one that is sort of, well, I think the trouble with it is that you don't expect QA to be, it doesn't seem separate from this, like a list of things you have to do. Like, let's say you're launching a sales campaign for your new record, right? Pre-sales, let's say, and you want to pre-sale as many copies of this album as you can. So you have a plan to build that pre-sale campaign, and you just list out all the different tasks you got to do. It's natural for you to think of QA as like, oh, it's just like a quick thing I do at the end of this list of tasks, and not think of it as its own standalone thing, like its own project, really. Not that you're going to spend as long on it as you would on the list of tasks, but just to say that it deserves its own space. And that's what I've done more I've gotten a lot better about checking web pages across multiple devices when I kind of mentally prepare for the idea that like, this is its own pain in the ass thing I have to do. It could take longer than I expect. It might take a whole day of just like, checking on my phone, checking on my laptop, checking on my desktop, and then tweaking and then checking again and then checking again. So giving it its own sort of space mentally outside of the project that you're QAing has really helped me out. I don't know, maybe other people aren't like that, but that's what's really made me, when I say help me out, I mean, I do it more. I do the QA effectively more when I think about it like that.
Dude, no, I couldn't agree with you more. That's a huge recommendation. I think that's really important. Separate it from the work itself. Separate checking your work from doing your work. And I think a way to do this, if you're like, okay, where do I even start with this, guys? Like, I'm hearing the term quality assurance for the first time. What I would say is like, make a checklist of the common things that you're working on in marketing your music right now. Maybe most of what you're doing is creating content, exporting videos, writing copy for your social media posts, and building ad campaigns. Let's say those are the 4 big things that you do. What I would recommend is write down the steps that you take in all 4 of those tasks and create just a quick QA checklist and be like, okay, did I make sure that the campaign budget was set to the right amount? Did I check my social post copy for typos? Did I make sure that I didn't have a typo in the links? Do all of the links work? Was I scheduling my email for the right time? Did I select the right audience? What you need to do is categorize those 4 tasks and build yourself a QA checklist. And this could live in a Google Doc. It could be something that you just reference whenever you're getting into one of your, sort of dedicated work checking times. And over time, you might add to that list as more and more marketing stuff comes up in what you do on a week-to-week basis. And then pro tip here, if you find that certain mistakes happen more often than others, make sure to document those at the very top in bold. Make sure that they're like the first things that you check. That way you get out of the habit of making those mistakes, or rather you get in the habit of checking for those mistakes. So that's kind of like part 1 for me of building a process. And I want to add to this, like, why this is important is like the best of the best people make mistakes in their work, right? You can't go into the studio to record a song and not expect to make mistakes in tracking, right? The same is true of your marketing. This is why we have processes to make sure that you're improving or catching the mistakes as they happen. That way, you don't get to launch day and you're like, everything's broken, fans are complaining, everything's on fire, help.
Yeah. I mean, it's such a necessary part, especially when you're dealing with big projects, building a website, building a sales campaign, building an email automation, any big component that has multiple parts you have to accomplish deserves its own dedicated round of quality assurance, making sure everything works as you had intended it to. And so tactically, the way to operationalize that is to say, I'm going to, as I go through it, as I build stuff, or as I check off tasks in my project, I'm going to write down all of the elements that need to be checked. Or I'm going to have an outline, like maybe you plan, with your group and you outline everything. Great. Go through your outline and itemize all the things that do need to be checked. Not just that they need to be checked, but how they need to be checked. For instance, if I'm building a web page, well, I need to check that Like, how do I need to check it? I need to check it on multiple devices to make sure it looks how I wanted it to. I also intended, and you can think about this as intents, like for every item on your checklist, what did you intend to happen? Write that out. And that way you have a bulleted list where you can just knock out everything one by one. And yeah, that's kind of how I do it. It's super helpful and very necessary.
For those of you that are tech tool minded, we use Asana for all of our project management across Indepreneur, and it's really great for all sorts of things as it comes to as it relates to, planning and working on marketing, planning on working on anything really. But it's especially good at helping to organize your quality assurance, your QA process. So if you are like, I don't want to do it in a Google Doc, I'd like to have something a little more organized than that, Asana might be a good fit for you. You can check it out. I'm not affiliated with Asana or compensated, although at this point they probably should.
Give me money, or at least for you, premium.
Yeah, I love Asana. Why I like that is, again, as you start to grow and as more people are involved in working with you as an artist, that allows you, any tool allows you to centralize a place where people can collaborate on stuff. So maybe you're not the one doing the quality assurance, the QA anymore after a few years, or you're getting other people on your team used to checking their own work. Having it in a place where everybody can see and know what you need to do can really, really help. So, baby steps here. Start off with a Google Doc, a checklist. As you graduate, you might end up using a tool like Asana or Trello or ClickUp or whatever. Any project management tool can really help with the quality assurance process. And like I said, the big goal here is just to avoid those color drain from your face moments where you're like, oh man, I messed up and it's live and now I have to put a fire out. There's no worse feeling than that. And a lot of it can be avoided. And like I said, the best people make mistakes. And so that's okay. You just need to have a process in place to prepare for it.
100%.
So these are two really simple processes that you can put into place to make your music marketing a lot more productive, a lot more fun, a lot less stressful, and a lot more streamlined in the new year, which is really kind of like the reason that we wanted to talk about it today. Is what can we download to you guys that you can use day to day as you're working on growing to make the marketing part a little less hard? I imagine that some of you might be thinking man, this sounds awfully routine, or it sounds awfully maybe corporate, or again, I like to be go with the flow. But I promise you, if you put these processes in place, it actually opens you up to have your mind free to be more creative because the infrastructure is in place that just allows you to not fall behind, to not miss something in the case of having a communication cadence, a meeting, and not to make mistakes or find yourself putting out last minute fires as it results to QA. I really can't stress enough how helpful and easy these things are once you start making a habit out of them and just putting them into the normal part of your work.
100%. Just as a word, a commentary on this is I am not the productive one among us two. I'm not the organized one. I guess I'm productive, just not organized. And so what Jack is saying is absolutely 100% true. Because Jack, I think, comes out of the box a little more organized than the rest of us, a little more sort of head on straight than the rest of us. And so, I've had more tactile grappling with these challenges. And he's, it's true. It is what will shake you loose of sort of a malaise or not actually getting the results you want.
Well, first off, that I'm flattered and humbled, but I gotta say, a lot of these processes, and I want to speak to anyone who isn't necessarily doesn't feel like they're the most organized, or would admittedly say I'm not the most organized, or I'm not organized at all. I didn't really come out of the box this way. Most of these things, that's super flattering and nice. I wish sometimes, but honestly, a lot of this stuff comes from the pain of having to deal with mistakes and being I really don't want this to happen again, or like we're slipping up, or watching artists and their teams be really great and on point about their marketing and then over time degrade, like that, that sort of insidious sort of like slow pull away from progress that I've seen happen. Like that's where so much of this comes from, is like the pain of watching those things happen or experiencing them personally is the reason that I was like, you got to lean into this stuff. It's really important. So if I can save you guys any strife, pain, struggle in 2025, this is the episode to help you do it. And maybe we'll have more of this stuff to talk about in the coming weeks as well. But I hope that if you don't talk about your marketing on a weekly basis, after listening to this, you will. If you don't have a QA process for your marketing and the build work that you're doing, I hope that you will. I hope that you kind of have a simple framework to implement both of those two processes, because they'll make you infinitely more productive in the next quarter, in the next year.
Thank you guys for listening.
Thanks for hanging out with us. We'll see you guys next time on Creative Juice. Peace.
Feel the East Coast, feel the West Coast, say what?